2022 is just a couple of days away, so I felt like it's only appropriate for my last video of the year to be a top 10 of my favorite designers from this year. I tried to mix in a pretty good variety of different designers who focus on textiles mostly, print design, textures, or don't even acknowledge textures at all and work in a completely different medium. So I think it's going to be interesting for a good mix of people. If you're new here, my name is Anastasia. I'm a fashion design graduate, currently saving up to do my master's degree. So for a couple of years, I'm going to be working on my personal projects, which I'm documenting on this channel as a behind the scenes of fashion design. So subscribe if you're interested. Person number one is a recent Central St. Martin graduate from 2020, if I'm not mistaken. The two words I would describe this collection with would be experimental and unique. When you graduate from CSM, that's usually what you get. All the students are typically very playful with their designs, and this one is no exception. I am absolutely in love with the way the fabric is cut, how it droops on the body, creating a very three-dimensional element. So I'm assuming this fabric must have been stitched in some sort of way, and it's very intriguing. When you imagine textile design as an area of fashion, you would probably imagine some sort of material that you have to create and add as much to it as possible. Whereas in this particular look, you can see that the fabric was not added to, it was sort of removed. And this was actually a zero-waste design, if I'm not wrong, because the fabric is simply cut in a very particular way that it opens up the flat piece into a three-dimensional piece by the way it droops. Really beautiful outcome in my opinion. The designer describes her collection in a quote. If you look at my collection, you might ask what the logic behind it is, because there are so many different various materials, colors and shapes. The best answer would be that it shows my personality. I'm the sort of person who buys a flower and puts it in a vase that matches its scent and appearance. I am very interested in various items and deliberate over a collection of precious, valuable things. A lot of products are coming out these days, but I want to talk about the importance of thinking about our consumption and how we can make our future on Earth a happy one, which is obviously incredible. Like any designer who focuses on sustainability, in my opinion, is looking into the future. I don't think there is a future in fashion without sustainability, so I'm super happy that this eye-catching collection is also part of that, which is just wonderful. Second designer is Emma Gudmundson. Designer says, this collection explores the effect of lines, flotations and colors in relation to the body. This has been achieved through sketching and experimenting with the domestic knitting machine as the main tool. The result is a zero-waste collection that has drawn inspiration from the bright colors and transparency of the flower hat jellyfish. The designer was also mixing organic shapes with neon colors to achieve a futuristic yet organic ensemble. When you take a peek at her items, they look so dynamic. Even when it's a static picture of the dress, you can just imagine and feel how it would move with the tiniest gush of wind, with the tiniest bit of movement. So it's an incredible example of a piece coming to life even through a static photo. Number 3 is Misha Japanwala. Her pieces are a work of art, and the designer specifically describes herself as an artist, a sculptor, a fashion designer. So she is an artist using fashion as just one of her tools. So she's creating in a variety of different areas, which is all the more exciting for fashion industry in my opinion. A quote from her regarding the collections: "This is the reclamation of bodies in art and how we want to depict them and what we want to say about them," the 25-year-old tells Vogue. The art that we consume globally is so heavily focused on the perspective of men and their view on female nudity. The desire to subvert the male gaze motivated the artist's thesis collection of wearable nude body castings. The collection was titled Azadi, meaning freedom in Urdu. If her work looks at all familiar to you, you might be a fan of either Lizzo or Cardi B, because her pieces were featured on Cardi B as body castings in a music video of Rumors, and that was also the first time I saw her work and immediately subscribed to her on Instagram, because I feel like it's such a unique way of looking at fashion, right? Because we obviously see female body as the focal point of fashion collection, and yes, the fashion industry is not exactly centered just around females. Obviously it's more inclusive, thankfully. However, when you have a root of the industry focused around women for hundreds of years and only something changing recently, we would still be associating the female body as the focal point of that whole nature. And because she's bringing the female sensuality, female body figure pieces to the forefront, and not in a form of a print or a silhouette that is focusing around the bust area, but she showcases it in such a direct way that it subverts the expectations. And especially because those pieces aren't out of fabric, they are casts of the female body, and they are strong and they're holding their shape. They present a very static look in the greatest way possible. They're sort of casting your body directly and indirectly, and they act as a permanent part of this look. And those casted pieces of the upper body of the female with breasts as a focal point act as a very grounding part of the look. When you combine them with drapery and softness of the fabric, they present a very strong emotion in connection to the material that they're made out of, and consequently they bring this idea of female strength through the look, through the material, and through the direct translation of the female bust. And I find that very unique for fashion. Now, a complete change of pace. We're gonna dive deep into prints, into overlays, into complex details with the next designer on our list. The words I would describe her would be intense, futuristic, and complex in terms of shapes and layering. The designer herself has not even actually graduated yet. She's a student at Antwerp Academy, if I'm not mistaken, and her work is just so three-dimensional, futuristic, gravity-defying in a sense. And the first reference that I feel from her latest pieces are somewhat reminiscent of crinolines and corsetry in an indirect way, which I feel like a lot of designers definitely tap into. I love how she's not afraid of experimenting with multiple different prints and shades of them, especially in some looks you see florals with a checkered lining, with a different shade of that checkered lining in a different piece, outlined with a very bright green piping and white bias binding to cover the boning on the corset. So I love the print mishmash, which works just so well, especially because of those tiny little details of piping that bring everything together. Next up is Roberts.wood, which is a design studio focusing on an innovative approach to textiles and construction. They are committed to developing sustainable, flexible production methods underpinned by the values of artisan technique, progressive, evolutionary digital design, and holistic sustainability. They also say the following: as part of our new system, we create limited edition pieces, beautifully handcrafted and intelligently executed, all made within our studio. Roberts.wood has always specialized in inventing techniques and constructing garments through the creation of textiles, and this core process will continue to be the focus of the digital atelier. Combining our signature hand-linking, non-stitched construction and digital technologies such as digital embroidery and digital patterns, we aim to produce completely unique, magical pieces, work that achieves a modern relevance. And to be honest, I don't think there's anything to add from my point of view. I feel like it looks, again, somewhat gravity-defying, but for a very different reason than the previous designer. Because the previous one, she created very three-dimensional structures that feel like they're sort of bouncing in the air and that they are sort of like a 3D simulation, so to speak. Whereas this design studio, they create pieces that feel like they are floating through the water. It feels very romantic, gentle, and dynamic, if I were to choose keywords. Next up is my absolute favorite designer, so nobody's surprised if you've seen my 2021 LVMH prize review. It's Nensi Dojaka. She's actually the winner of that prize, and I'm extremely happy about that because the way she presents her work, the way she talks about femininity and gentleness and sexiness without being too revealing, you know, it's just incredible. It showcases femininity in such a different light, even though it's using transparent textiles and layering like we've seen before, but the way she presents it, it's completely different direction. She's overlaying brown tones in such a sexy way that it makes me feel like brown is the most elevated tonal palette, which would definitely not have been my first instinct a couple of years ago, but now since Nensi, I feel like brown is the sexiest color ever. The keywords for her would be gentle nudity and sophisticated softness, as she also says herself. There are plenty of articles to choose from as the winner of LVMH, but one of them says the following: Nensi Dojaka is one of the freshest forces in women's wear for a long time to emerge from London or perhaps internationally. They describe her recent collection as showing all the finesse she's managed to evolve in dressing the female body in classily engineered nuances of reveal and conceal. If you feel like her work seems at all familiar, then you might be interested in celebrity media because Zendaya has worn her work, Bella Hadid, or a plethora of other actresses and models who have worn her work, because absolutely everyone is in love, just the same way as I am. So I would like to invite you to our cult. Come on in, we love brown. Next up is Knowles, which they recently transitioned into, but it used to be Charlotte Knowles. She is a London-based fashion designer creating her label with her partner. They have created one of the most extraordinary brands as well, but I'm here to rave about all of them, so no surprise. The keywords, or key sentences rather, that I would describe their collections with would be sensuality with a hint of retro, which is somewhat visible in the prints, in the color palettes, in little tiny details of cut, for example, the bottom part of the flare of the trousers. Sensuality comes from that gathering, comes from it being very skin tight, opened in unexpected areas, opening up the ribcage from the front in an unexpected manner, which is very unique. Her work is changing season to season, however, it still keeps those core elements, which is great for brand recognition. Next brand is actually new to me. I've recently just discovered them a couple of weeks ago. Why I wanted to include them in this particular video was because of the placement print. I love how they work with imagery, straightforwardly adding it onto fabric, but then when you zoom into the details of the looks, you can see the tiniest little elements of the pleating and a very specific method that they used in the process. Also, the way the collection was presented in the photos on Vogue Runway, I absolutely adore the massive blown out prints, and especially when they are sort of blending in with what you see on the front. It's a very unique way of presentation, so I wanted to include the presentation aspect into this top 10 as well, so there's that. It's the idea of memory as a reservoir for optimism, says the designer in his latest women's collection titled Genealogy. It takes shape as a project that examines old family photos and transcribes them as looks for spring-summer 2022. The collection itself pickpockets a variety of eras, designer says, from 1950s, 1960s, 70s. It's a beautiful mishmash of different eras brought together by placement prints and photography from the family archives. Number 9 is Rui by Ru Jo, also a contender on this year's LVMH. And the words I would describe her work with would definitely be fragility and softness. The textiles that she creates are so gentle, and because the way the pieces are connected by the tiniest little dot with a tiny pearl in the middle of them makes you feel like the fabric is being stretched out and can rip at any moment. But because they are strategically created in such a manner, it definitely is strong enough to hold its shape, but offers a very unique feeling of soft tension as I see it. They describe themselves as a brand that explores the duality of all things, the relationship between matters and beings, always in a more philosophical way. Rui always finds beauty in the imperfection, the unfinished, the broken, or even unloved, and they are on a constant study of the space between perfection and imperfection. The softness and careful fragility of Rui's compositions are met with powerful severity, revealing their strength and delicacy at the same time. Last but not least is Thom Browne. It's arguably an extremely well-known brand and a giant, but I just could not go this year without mentioning his work. It was incredible. The collections are always great, but I particularly enjoyed the colorful explosions that we saw this year. The beautiful layered colorful looks with print overlays, it was incredible, down to tiniest details like freaking sock print, different sock prints. Oh my god. Okay, the two words that I would describe this collection with would be layering and print balance, and you'll know what I mean in just a second. Thom Browne is widely recognized for redefining modern tailoring. Through his collections for men, women and children, Browne conveys a true American sensibility. As he says, the idea of uniformity to me is interesting because I think it does show true individuality, and I think that it shows true confidence. I'm so madly in love with how the little details of the collection trickle down from look to look in a completely different element of clothing, in a completely different way of presenting textiles. So for example, the backpack that we see, the lobster backpack on one of the looks, is also visible in a form of a knit on socks on one of the feet of my favorite looks, not on two, just on one, which is a subtle nod because the other sock is also a knit with also a pattern, but it's no longer a lobster, it's a Dutch hound, the wiener dog. So I adore the attention to detail, and I love the cross-referencing from look to look. It's just my absolute favorites, and I feel like he's one of the greatest designers when it comes to that specific method of working. I definitely aspire to work in a similar manner, although I feel like my work process is a little bit different. Maybe I should be just dreaming but not doing it then. So these are the 10 designers that I definitely could not go without mentioning this year, so definitely go check them out. I'll leave the links to their Instagrams, to their website, so that you can continue to check them out and support them at least with a follow if you're interested. Thank you for watching. I hope this video was interesting to you, and see you next year. Bye!